In the winter of 1733, a convent stood at the edge of the world. Buried in snow, cut off from God and man, the sisters of St. Agnes prayed for light. But something else answered. One by one, their voices fell silent, until only one remained. She said she heard a whisper beneath the chapel, a promise of warmth when heaven grew cold. They called her blessed. They were wrong. The year of our Lord 1733 was one of bitter cold and strange occurrence in the northern colonies. The rivers froze early, the deer vanished in the forest, and the pines themselves groaned in the wind as though confessing their own dark sins. It was said that Christmas came that year wrapped not in song, but in silence, a silence so deep that it seemed to swallow the prayers of the faithful before they could rise to heaven. At the edge of the silent wilderness stood St. Agnes Convent, a humble mission of stone and timber founded some 20 winters before by French sisters who had fled the wars in Europe. It clung to the frozen hills above a village called Northvale, a settlement of perhaps 30 souls, hunters, trappers, and widows who spoke more to their fires than to one another. The convent's bell was the only sound that marked the passing of time, and in winter, even that sound seemed muffled by the endless snow. Among the sisters who dwelt there was Sister Agnes Marin, a woman of 30 years who had once been known in Boston for her charity and her strange gift of hearing the voice of grace, as she called it. Her eyes were pale as ice, her hair hidden always beneath her wimple, and her countenance bore both gentleness and an inward unease. She had come north 2 years before, seeking solitude and atonement for some unspoken grief. The Mother Superior, Sister Marguerite, was old and nearly blind, and it fell upon Agnes to keep the chapel lit and the novices guided. It was she who tended the chapel lamp when the wind screamed through the shutters, she who prayed longest at the midnight hour, and she who felt, though she never spoke aloud, that the convent was not alone in the forest, for there were whispers. The villagers of Northvale said the land was older than any church, that it belonged to no man but something else, a presence that slept beneath the roots and the stones. They told tales of the old father of the woods, a spirit who despised the ringing of church bells and the smell of incense. Yet the sisters, bound by vows of obedience, dismissed such talk as heathen foolishness. Faith, they said, was their armor, prayer their sword. And so it was until the 3rd week of Advent, when the first omen appeared. It began with the snow. One morning, Sister Agnes found strange marks upon it. Not the tracks of beasts, but circles and spirals, as if the wind itself had traced symbols in the drifts. They surrounded the convent yard like a warding charm written by unseen hands. When she brushed one away, she felt a pulse beneath the earth, a trembling like the faint beat of a buried heart. That night she dreamed of a voice, low, tender, and vast, whispering through the dark, "Daughter of sorrow, open thy heart that light may enter." When she awoke, the chapel candles had all gone out. The following days grew colder still. The sky was a vault of iron, the sun no more than a pale disk that gave no warmth. Even the villagers ceased to visit, save for a hunter named Elias Brand, who brought meat to the sisters once a week. He spoke little, but once he said to Sister Agnes in a hushed tone, "The snow's wrong this year. The animals run from it. Even the wolves won't cross the ridge." Agnes thanked him and crossed herself, though his words troubled her. She began to sense a heaviness in the air, as though the forest itself leaned closer to listen whenever she prayed. On the night of the solstice, she kept vigil alone in the chapel. The others had retired, and only the sound of the wind and the crackle of the hearth remained. She knelt before the image of the Virgin and prayed for mercy upon the world, for forgiveness, for light, for peace. Her breath clouded before her face, for even the fire seemed afraid to burn. Then came the knocking, soft, deliberate, once, twice, thrice, upon the great wooden doors of the convent. Agnes rose, her heart thrumming. None would come so late in such cold. Taking a lantern, she opened the door and found no one there, only the vast whiteness of the snow and the whispering of the pines. Yet at her feet lay a thing most strange, a bundle wrapped in crimson cloth, half buried by the wind. She bent and lifted it. It was warm to the touch, though no heat remained in the air. Within, she found a small carved figure of a woman robed in white, her face smooth and eyeless. Upon her chest had been etched a single word in Latin, Mater, Mother, When Sister Agnes brought inside, every candle in the convent flared to life at once. The sudden light made the old stones gleam like bones. From that hour, nothing was as before. She placed a figure upon the altar, thinking it perhaps a lost votive offering, yet she could not pray before it. Whenever she knelt, she felt a presence behind her, a breath upon her neck, a murmur at the edge of hearing, like words spoken through glass. That night, she dreamed again. She stood in the forest, barefoot in the snow, and the trees bowed before her. The voice spoke once more, nearer now and full of sorrow. You have been chosen, Agnes. The light is weary. Bear it anew. When she awoke, she found her hands covered in soot and the altar fire cold. No mark of the carved figure remained. It was gone, though none had entered or left the chapel. She told no one. Yet from that day forward, the sisters noticed changes in her. Her eyes grew distant, her words slow and uncertain. She would pause mid-prayer, listening to something none could hear. Once, Sister Beatrice swore she saw her standing before the window long past midnight, whispering to the snow. The Mother Superior grew alarmed. You pray too hard, child, she said gently. Even the holiest flame consumes what it burns within. But Agnes only smiled faintly. Mother, I feel something stirring. Not evil, I think, not yet. Christmas Eve came, bringing with it a storm unlike any seen in memory. The wind screamed from the hills, tearing shingles from the roof and driving snow through the cracks. The sisters huddled by the hearth and prayed, their voices drowned by the gale. Agnes did not join them. She was found at dawn, kneeling in the chapel, her hands folded, her face alight with fever. Before her, on the altar, lay the wooden figure once more, and in its eyeless face, 2 drops of red had appeared, like tears of blood. Outside, the storm had ceased. The forest was silent again. But beneath that silence, something new had begun to stir, a heartbeat faint and unholy, pulsing beneath the snow. The dawn after the storm came gray and still. The snow lay thick across the hills, smooth as marble, as though the world had been sealed beneath a shroud. No bird sang. No wind moved. It was as if even God had turned his face away from that corner of the earth. Within St. Agnes Convent, the sisters gathered by the fire, their eyes hollow from a night without sleep. The storm had torn down half the belfry, and the bell lay cracked upon the frozen ground outside, its silence echoing through their thoughts. Sister Agnes did not speak of what she had seen. She told the others that she had dreamt too long before the altar, and that the blood upon the wooden figure's face was a trick of the wax candles. But none believed her, for the air in the chapel had grown different, heavy, almost alive. Each time they entered to pray, the shadows seemed to move where no light shifted, and the crucifix upon the wall hung a little lower than before, as though the wood itself bent under some invisible hand. 3 nights after Christmas, Sister Beatrice went missing. They found her the next morning at the edge of the forest, kneeling in the snow, her face lifted to the sky, her lips blue and parted as if in song. Around her, the snow had melted into perfect circles, 7 of them, each marked with an unfamiliar symbol. Her rosary was gone. When they brought her body inside, her hands were clasped around nothing, as though she still held something unseen. Mother Marguerite, trembling with age and fear, commanded the chapel to be sealed. There is sin among us, she said, or something worse. We shall fast and pray until the Lord reveals his mercy. But Sister Agnes's thoughts were not of mercy. In her sleep she heard the voice again, closer than before, almost gentle. Do not fear me, child. The world has forgotten the warmth of its first light. You shall bear it again. She awoke in tears, uncertain whether she wept for fear or for joy. Her heart beat strangely now, faster, deeper, as though another rhythm pulsed within her own. In the days that followed, the convent seemed to decay beneath their prayers. Candles sputtered out as soon as they were lit. The holy water froze solid in its font. The bread baked for communion rose blackened and hollow, crumbling like ash when broken. Even the air held a bitter taste, as if the breath of the forest had seeped inside. The villagers of Northvale refused to approach. They spoke of lights in the trees, shapes moving behind the convent windows at night, and a sound, a low, steady hum, that rose from the ground whenever the bell tower's shadow fell upon the snow. Elias Brand came once more with food, his eyes wild with fear. "Sister," he said to Agnes, "the woods are wrong. The snow bleeds where your footprints lie. I swear it by the cross." But Agnes only smiled, pale and weary. "The Lord works in mysteries, brother Elias. Perhaps even in pain there is promise." That night she could not sleep. The convent was silent save for the groaning of beams under the weight of snow. She rose, lit a lantern, and walked barefoot to the sealed chapel door. The wax seal Mother Marguerite had placed there was cracked, though by no hand she could name. The door creaked open to a draught of air, so cold it stung her lungs. The chapel was dark save for a faint red glow that pulsed from beneath the altar, slow and rhythmic, like the beat of a heart. She fell to her knees. "What are you?" she whispered. "Spirit, angel, demon, what name do you bear?" The voice came not from the air, but from within her own chest. "Name is but a shadow. I am what was before the first dawn. I am warmth when heaven grows cold. I am the promise kept in blood." Her lantern flickered. The shadows rose in the corners of the chapel, moving like smoke given thought. The crucifix turned upon its nail. The carved figure the eyeless mother lay upon the altar again, yet now her form had changed. Her hands rested upon her belly, as though guarding something unborn. Agnes reached toward it, trembling. When her fingers touched the wood, she felt a surge of warmth travel through her arm, not pain, but a fullness so profound it made her gasp. Beneath her palm, the figure seemed to breathe. The next morning, she was found collapsed before the altar, whispering fragment of scripture that twisted in her mouth. The word became flesh, and the flesh became flame. Mother Marguerite ordered her confined to her cell, fearing madness. "You are ill, my daughter," she said through the door. "Rest. Pray. We will send word to Boston for a priest." But no rider could reach them. The roads were buried, the river frozen solid. They were alone. On the 7th night, the sisters awoke to a sound like weeping from the chapel. The sealed door shuddered with each sob. Some claimed it was a woman's cry. Others said it was the wind. When at last they dared open it, they found the walls damp with moisture, though no leak could be found, and the altar stones warm as if from beneath. Agnes lay upon the floor, her face radiant and terrible. "He is near," she murmured. "He walks already among the trees." "Who walks, Agnes?" cried Sister Beatrice's replacement, her voice breaking. "The one who calls me mother." Her words fell like stones into the silence. From that night forward, none dared approach her. The snow outside never melted, yet a strange scent of iron and flowers filled the air near her cell. Sometimes, when the sisters passed by, they heard two voices praying within, one pleading for mercy, the other whispering in reply. By Candlemas, the convent had become a tomb. Only 3 sisters remained, too weak to flee. Mother Marguerite, aged beyond her years, burned the chapel icons one by one, saying, "Better no image than a tainted one." But each time she cast one into the fire, the flame burned black, and the smoke rose straight upward, as if drawn some unseen mouth above. In the end, it was Elias Brand who found them. He came with a party of villagers once the thaw began. Months later, when the snow at last began to recede, they found the convent abandoned. The chapel was open to the air, its roof torn away, the altar stones split as though by lightning. Of the sisters, only a few bones remained, half buried in the melted snow. Yet in the center of the chapel, untouched by decay, stood a statue of a woman in white, her face smooth and eyeless, her hands folded over her breast. And beneath her feet, frozen in the earth, pulsed the faintest echo, a heartbeat still beating beneath the snow. Spring came late to Northvale that year. The thaw was sluggish, reluctant, as though the earth itself feared what it might reveal beneath the melting snow. The river broke with a sound like distant thunder, flooding the lower fields, and the villagers watched as debris drifted past. Fallen branches, pieces of roof, and once what looked like a wooden crucifix half-burned, carried away by the current. They spoke little of the convent. To some, it was cursed ground. To others, a warning. The bell that once marked the hours now lay cracked and cold beside the chapel ruins, and no one dared touch it. Even the birds kept to the far side of the valley. Elias Brand alone ventured near, driven by guilt and memory. He had been the last to see the sisters alive, and though the others told him to forget, he could not. Something in him whispered that the story was not yet finished. He came one morning before sunrise, mist curling over the river, the world hushed except for the drip of melting snow. The convent stood as he had left it, half buried, roof torn, windows empty like sockets in a skull. The air smelled faintly of iron and wildflowers, a scent that made his skin crawl, though he could not say why. He crossed himself and stepped inside. The chapel was open to the sky. Sunlight fell through broken rafters, glimmering on the ice pooled over the altar stones. The statue stood at the center, white and smooth, her eyeless face turned toward heaven. For a moment, Elias thought the figure's hands had moved. They were no longer folded, but extended outward, palms open as if offering something unseen. He drew closer. At her feet, frozen into the thawing earth, he saw the shape of a small cradle carved from wood. Within it lay a single object, a rosary, its beads black as coal, its cross missing. He reached for it, but the ground shuddered, a faint tremor, like something stirring deep beneath. The ice cracked, spreading in a circle from where he knelt. From below came a low, rhythmic sound, steady as breath. It was faint but unmistakable. A heartbeat. Elias staggered back, clutching the rosary. "God preserve me," he whispered. "What evil lingers here?" But another voice, quiet as a sigh, answered from the still air. "Not evil, child, only remembrance." He fled then, not looking back, though the sound seemed to follow him all the way down the hill, that faint, pulsing echo of life beneath the ground. For weeks afterward, the villagers of Northvale spoke of strange occurrences. Livestock were found standing still in their pens, as if listening to something distant. Candles burned blue instead of gold. At night, the forest glowed faintly with drifting lights, like will-o'-the-wisps. And always, in the deepest hours before dawn, there came the soft tolling of a bell, though no bell had rung there since the convent fell. Children began to dream of a woman in white who walked the frozen fields. Some said she carried a child wrapped in crimson cloth. Others said she bore nothing, only held her arms as though she had lost what she once carried. The elders forbade talk of her, but the story spread, whispered from hearth to hearth. The White Mother of Northvale. Some called her saint, others spirit. Those who prayed to her found their crops grew green, their children healed of fever. Yet those who mocked her name found their wells dry, their cattle stillborn, their nights sleepless with dread. By midsummer, a shrine had appeared at the edge of the forest, a rough cairn of stones marked with an old carving, a woman without eyes, hands crossed upon her chest. None claimed to have built it. Each villager swore it had appeared overnight. Elias went often to that place. He brought offerings of bread and candles, though he told no one. In his dreams, he heard her voice, the same voice that had spoken to Sister Agnes, murmuring words of comfort that chilled his soul. One night, he dreamed of her standing upon the frozen river, her white robe trailing in the water. "You fear what you do not understand," she said. "Once, they prayed to heaven and found only silence. Now they pray to me, and I answer." He awoke weeping, his hand clenched around the black rosary. When he opened it, he saw that the missing cross had reappeared, carved not of wood, but of bone. Years passed. The story of St. Agnes, Convent, faded into legend, as all terrible things do when time wearies of remembering them. Northvale prospered again, though no priest would settle there. Each Christmas Eve, the villagers lit candles in their windows, not for Christ, but for her, the White Mother, the guardian of snow and sorrow. Some said they saw her walking the hills when the wind howled. Others her lullaby carried on the air, a melody that made infants cry and old men pray. No one dared speak ill of her, for those who did vanished before the next moonrise, leaving behind only footprints in the snow that led toward the ruins of the convent. Elias grew old, haunted by his memories. In his final winter, he returned once more to the place where it all began. The statue still stood, though time had worn her features smooth. Around her feet grew pale flowers that bloomed even in frost. He knelt and whispered, "Was it you, Agnes? Or something wearing your face?" The wind shifted, carrying a scent of iron and lilies. The voice that answered was neither cruel nor kind, only endless. Names fade, faith remains. All light begins in darkness. When the villagers found him the next day, he was kneeling still, eyes closed, a faint smile upon his lips. The ground beneath him was warm, though snow fell thick around. And beside him, where his hand had rested, lay a new carving, a small wooden figure of a woman in white, her face smooth and eyeless, her hands resting gently upon her breast. They buried Elias Brand near the ruins, and from that day onward, the snow around his grave never melted. The people of Northvale said it was a sign of blessing, though none could agree whether it came from heaven or something older still. Each Christmas Eve, the bells that no longer existed could be heard faintly in the distance, tolling from beneath the hills. And those who listened too closely swore they could hear, beneath the ringing, the steady rhythm of a heartbeat, slow, patient, eternal, echoing through the frozen earth. And so the story lived on. They say that when the snow falls heavy and the world grows silent, a woman in white walks the woods, bearing in her arms the promise of warmth or the memory of it, and that her whisper can still be heard among the pines. Fear not the cold, for I am its mother. Northvale, Massachusetts, present day. Population, 1,842. A postcard town wrapped in snow, its main street lined with antique lamps and wreaths, the air sharp with pine and chimney smoke. To most, it was just another New England village preparing for Christmas. But to Dr. Clara Hensley, professor of early colonial history at Boston University, it was a mystery that had never stopped whispering. For 10 years, she had studied forgotten missions, failed settlements, the small tragedies history prefers to lose. St. Agnes, Convent was one such place. Founded in 1711, destroyed by storm and fire 2 decades later. The official record ended there, but local tales spoke otherwise. A nun, a miracle, a curse, and always the White Mother. Claire arrived 3 days before Christmas with a single suitcase and a box of archival notes. The old innkeeper, Mr. Keller, greeted her with the wary kindness of someone who had seen too many strangers come seeking ghosts. "You'll want to stay clear of the hills after dark," he said, handing her the key. "Snow's thickest and up there. Folks say it swallows sound." She smiled politely. "I'm writing, not wandering." "Writing's worse," he muttered. "Writing remembers what's best forgot." The ruins lay 2 miles north of town, a scatter of moss-covered stones half buried in frost. Clara went there the next morning, recorder in hand, camera slung across her chest. The air felt strangely still. Even the crows were silent. She brushed away snow from a fallen slab and found a carving beneath, a woman in a wimple, eyeless, her hands crossed over her chest. She recognized the description immediately. The White Mother. The image matched sketches made nearly 300 years earlier. "St. Agnes," she whispered into the recorder. Carving intact. Local granite. Symbolism unclear, possibly Marian adaptation. But when she played the recording back, her voice was not alone. After her words came a second whisper, faint but distinct. "Do you still pray, child?" She stared at the device, her pulse quickening. The air smelled faintly of iron and lilies. That night, she reviewed her photos at the inn. In one, the statue appeared exactly as she remembered. In another, taken seconds later, its hands were open, palms extended outward as if reaching toward her. The digital timestamp confirmed no delay between them. At midnight, the inn's power flickered. Somewhere outside, a bell tolled, soft, far away, counting 3 slow notes before fading. No church in Northvale had a bell. Clara told herself it was a trick of wind and old stories. Yet when she tried to sleep, she dreamed of a woman standing in falling snow, her face smooth and pale, whispering, "The light sleeps. Wake it." She woke, gasping, the room cold as stone. The clock read 3 a.m. On her bedside table lay a small object she did not remember bringing, a rosary, its beads black, its cross missing. The next day she went to the town library, hoping to find rational ground. The librarian, a gray-haired woman named Mrs. Lang, handed her a local chronicle from 1897. Inside was a brittle photograph of a wooden statue unearthed after a flood. The caption read, "Recovered from St. Agnes grounds. Believed to represent the Mother of Snow. Donor unknown." Clara traced the faded image with her gloved hand. The statue's face was eyeless. When she looked up, Mrs. Lang was watching her. "You shouldn't stay past Christmas," the librarian said softly. "Why not?" "Because she walks then, always on Christmas Eve." Clara forced a smile. "Legends keep towns alive." Mrs. Lang shook her head. "Not this one, dear. This one keeps itself alive." That evening, snow began to fall again. Thick, heavy, smothering sound. Clara drove back toward the ruins, drawn by a pull she couldn't name. She told herself it was research. Yet when she stepped in the car, lantern in hand, she felt the air vibrate beneath her boots, faint but rhythmic. A heartbeat. She followed it to the collapsed chapel. The ground was cracked open by frost, revealing the top of a stone stair descending into darkness, a passage no survey had ever recorded. The heartbeat grew louder. "Is anyone here?" she called. Only the wind answered, carrying a whisper that seemed to come from beneath the earth. "The mother waits." Her lantern flickered. For a moment she saw shapes carved into the stairwell walls, circles and spirals like those Sister Agnes had once found in the snow. Clara's breath caught. She turned to leave, but her footprints behind her were gone, filled in by fresh snow though the sky was clear. She fled back to town, half slipping on the frozen road, reaching the inn just past midnight. The lobby lights were out. The air was warm and smelled faintly of wax and flowers. On the front desk lay a note, written in looping script she did not recognize. "Welcome home, sister." Her fingers trembled as she turned it over. The paper was old, edges brown by time, and pressed into its corner was a crimson seal depicting a woman in white. Outside, the wind rose suddenly, carrying with it the faint tolling of a bell, not from above, but from deep beneath the frozen earth. Clara's heart pounded in time with it, and somewhere in the distance, through the falling snow, a figure moved between the trees, slow, graceful, and terribly familiar. The White Mother had returned. Christmas Eve. The town of Northvale slept under its heaviest snowfall in decades. Street lamps flickered behind veils of white, and the world seemed made of silence. Dr. Clara Hensley had not slept in 2 days. The crimson-sealed note still lay upon her desk at the inn. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the words glowing faintly against the dark. "Welcome home, sister." Something had called her back to the ruins, and tonight she could no longer resist. She dressed warmly, tucked a recorder and a small flashlight into her satchel, and drove through the storm until the road ended. From there she walked, lantern in hand, her boots sinking into fresh snow that glittered like glass. The world around her was empty, save for the faint tolling of a bell, so distant it might have been memory. The chapel ruins rose from the drifts like the ribs of a buried beast. The stone stair she discovered days before gaped open, half choked with ice. She hesitated at its mouth, her breath clouding in the cold air. "Just a cellar," she whispered to herself. "Just history." She descended. The steps wound deep, farther than they should have, their walls carved with symbols, circles, spirals, strange shapes that pulsed when her light passed over them. The air grew warmer, then hot, then damp with something that was not water. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a chamber. The walls glowed faintly red, though there was no fire. In the center stood a stone altar, its surface slick with frost. Upon it lay a wooden figure of a woman in white, smooth and eyeless, her hands open in welcome. Beneath the altar, the earth moved. A slow, deep rhythm, a heartbeat. Clara set down her recorder. "This is Dr. Clara Hensley," she said, voice shaking. "December 24th, 11:57 p.m. I've reached the lower chamber beneath St. Agnes Chapel. The structure, the heartbeat quickened, matching hers. The ground trembled softly. Her light flickered once, twice, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that darkness came a whisper, tender and ancient. You came so far to find me, daughter. Why fear what you sought? Clara froze. Who's there? I have slept long. You have woken me. St. Agnes. A sound like quiet laughter. Names change. Faith endures. You call me mother once. The ground split beneath her feet, and warmth surged upward. Not heat, but life itself, rushing through her veins. Memories that were not her own flashed before her eyes. A convent lost to snow. Sisters praying by candlelight. A woman kneeling before an altar, whispering the same words Clara had just spoken. She saw Sister Agnes, pale, trembling, reaching toward the same wooden figure. She saw light bloom from within her hands. Then pain. Then silence. Clara stumbled backward. But her path was gone. The stairway had sealed with stone. The voice filled her mind now, calm and sorrowful. You seek to remember. Then remember all. The chamber brightened. Not with fire, but with blood-red light rising from the ground itself. The statue's hands closed around her own. The wood was warm, pulsing. Every age forgets, the voice murmured. Every age must be reminded. Clara tried to pull away. You're not a saint. No, I am what saints were made to silence. Her lantern burst, scattering sparks like falling stars. For an instant she saw the walls not a stone but a bone. Ribs curving overhead, veins of red light pulsing through them like living roots. Then everything went white. When the storm cleared 2 days later, the sheriff's search team found the ruins buried again, the entrance sealed by ice. They found Clara's car, her notebook, and her recorder still running. The final entry was her voice, calm and distant. It's warm now. She's not what they said. She's a light beneath the snow. Then a long pause, and faintly, under her breath, I see her face. After that, only the sound of a heartbeat, slow and steady, until the tape ended. That spring, townsfolk found a new statue standing in the ruins, a woman in white, smooth and eyeless, her hands open, her face turned toward the sky. No one claimed to have placed it there. They said it resembled the missing historian from Boston. Every Christmas Eve, when the snow falls heaviest, the people of Northvale still hear a bell toll from beneath the frozen hills. And those who venture near the old convent swear they can see her standing among the trees, calm, radiant, her white robes untouched by the wind. They call her now the Second Mother. And when the snow hushes the world to silence, one can almost hear 2 heartbeats beneath the earth, one ancient, one newly joined, pulsing together in endless